For 39 years, I've stared at that last photo. My parents, Joyce and Walter, walking hand in hand in Meadowbrook Park, smiling. The police said they just vanished. We grieved them, we searched for them, we accepted they were gone. Then, last Tuesday, a park ranger called me about a rabbit, a hole, and a book. That book wasn't just a photo album, it was a journal, and the first line read, "If you are reading this, we are finally free." If you've ever felt the sting of an unanswered question in your own family, this story might feel familiar. Leave a comment below if you believe some secrets are better left buried. My name is Laura, and I am 59 years old. For more than half my life, I have been the daughter of the Meadowbrook Ghosts. That's what the local papers called them in 1985. The Meadowbrook Ghosts. It sounds like a cheap campfire story, but for me and for my brother Stephen, it was the cold, hard reality that shaped every day that followed. When you lose someone, you have a funeral. You have a grave. You have a quiet place to sit and cry, a marker in the earth that says, "They were here, it's over." We didn't have that. We had a 1978 sedan left in a gravel parking lot. We had a half-empty coffee pot on the stove at home. And we had that one final photograph. I'm looking at it now. It sits on the mantelpiece of the house I grew up in. Their house, the one I never left. It was May 12th, 1985. Mother's Day. I was 20, home from my sophomore year at the local college. My brother Stephen was 22, just about to graduate from the state university up north. We were all together. It felt normal. I remember my mother, Joyce, loved the scarf I'd bought her. It was silk, with little blue flowers. She put it on immediately, and she's wearing it in the photo, a splash of color against her simple white blouse. My father, Walter, was quiet. He was always quiet. He worked in finance at a small, respectable firm downtown. Harris, Vance, and Kleiber. It sounded important. He wore a suit every day and carried a leather briefcase. His quietness, his stress, it was just Dad. We learned to walk on eggshells around him, especially on weekends. "Let's get a picture," I'd said, pulling out my little disc camera. Before Stephen runs off to see his friends. Stephen groaned. He was always impatient, always vibrating with a need to be somewhere else. "Come on, Dad, hold Mom's hand," I'd instructed. He did. He reached out and took her hand. And I snapped the picture. My mother is smiling at him, a genuine soft smile. My father is looking almost at the camera, but not quite. And his smile, well, for 39 years, that smile has haunted me. It wasn't a smile, it was a grimace. It was the smile of a man holding his breath. "You look perfect," I said. They walked down the path, the one that leads to the sycamore grove by the creek. Stephen left, hopping in his beat-up hatchback. I went back to our car to wait, reading a textbook. They never came back. By 4 p.m., I was annoyed. By 6 p.m., I was scared. By 9 p.m., I was standing with a police officer, Detective Michael, by the empty car, the park floodlights casting long, terrifying shadows. The search lasted for weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers walking arm in arm through the woods. They found nothing. No footprints past the creek. No torn clothing. No signs of a struggle. They just vanished. Detective Michael was a kind man. He sat with us, with me and Stephen in our silent, empty house. "The two most likely scenarios, kids, he said, his voice gentle, are foul play, or they chose to leave. We rejected both. Foul play, who and why. They had no enemies. They were just Joyce and Walter. And chose to leave. Leave us? On Mother's Day, it was unthinkable. It was cruel. So we settled on a third option, a tragic accident. They'd slipped. They'd fallen into the creek, which was running high that spring and been washed away. Or they'd gotten lost. Or, the not knowing is a special kind of hell. It's a room with no doors. You just sit in it. Stephen couldn't sit in it. He graduated and moved to Oregon. He built a new life, one where he wasn't the boy whose parents vanished. He called every Sunday, but we never really talked about it. He dealt with his grief by running. I dealt with mine by staying. I stayed in their house. I paid the mortgage. I dusted their things. I kept their memory, waiting for a call, a letter, a knock on the door. I became the keeper of the mystery. I never married. I never had children. I was the daughter, frozen in time, waiting in the car for my parents to come back from their walk for 39 years, until last Tuesday. The phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Laura? My name is David. I'm a ranger at Meadowbrook Park. My heart did that familiar sick lurch. I donate to the park's conservation fund every year in their name. I assumed it was a fundraiser. Yes? Ma'am, this is a strange call. Something was found. A personal effect. We ran the name from the inscription against the park's cold case files, and your parents' names came up. The room went cold. What? What was found? It's it looks like an old book. A photo album, maybe. It's in bad shape, but the inscription is clear. J&W, 1985. J&W, Joyce and Walter. My mother had things initialed all the time. Where, how, it's the strangest thing, ma'am, Ranger David said, his voice hesitant. We've had this severe drought, as you know. The creek bed on the west side of the park near the old sycamore grove, it's lower than we've ever seen it. The bank, which is usually just mud, has dried out and started to collapse. One of our groundskeepers was clearing brush and saw a rabbit, a whole warren of them, actually, digging. The rabbit was kicking something out of a newly collapsed burrow. It was this book. It must have been buried deep in the bank mat and wrapped in some kind of plastic. That's the only reason it's even halfway together. A rabbit. After all the detectives, the searches, the psychics we'd secretly called in the 90s. A rabbit. I drove to the ranger station in a daze. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. What was it? A final note? A map to their bodies? My mind was a storm of terrible possibilities. Ranger David was young, barely older than I was when they left. He had the book in a large, clear evidence bag. It was awful. A small leather-bound album, the kind you'd put 4x6 photos in. It was warped and caked in dry, gray mud. It smelled of mildew and earth. It was wrapped tight in an old oilcloth, he said, pointing to the rotted fragments in the bag, like a sailor would use. Someone wanted this to survive. I signed a paper. I took the bag. I walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat the same way I'd sat 39 years ago. I opened the bag. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I pulled out the book. The leather was stiff as a board, the cover embossed with a faded gold J&W and the year 1985. I pried it open. The pages were a solid block of brown, water-stained paper, but as I carefully separated the first page from the cover, I saw it. It wasn't a photo album. The pages were lined, and there was writing. My mother's elegant, looping script. I recognized it instantly. It was the same script from the grocery lists on the fridge, from the birthday cards in my drawer, and I read the first line, a line that was not meant for a grocery list, a line that rewrote my entire life. It was dated May 12, 1985. If you are reading this, we are finally free. I read it again and again. Free? Free from what? My first thought was a kidnapping, a ransom note that never got sent. We are free meant they'd been taken, and this was the start of their ordeal. My second thought, the one that sunk into my stomach like a stone, free from us. I sat in that parking lot until the sun went down, the book in my lap, the world tilting on its axis. I called Stephen that night. His voice was wary. Laura, what's up? He always sounds wary when I call him out of the blue. He's always afraid I'm not okay. They found something, I said. My voice was a croak. In the park. A book. A journal. Mom's. Silence. I heard him exhale. Laura, don't do this to yourself. Every few years there's a new lead. It's always nothing. It's her handwriting, Stephen, and it was buried on purpose by the creek. I read him the first line. More silence. This time it was a heavy, loaded quiet. I'll be on the first flight tomorrow, he said, and hung up. Stephen arrived at noon the next day. He's 61 now, with graying hair and the same impatient energy, now softened by age. He hugged me hard at the airport. Are you okay? He asked. No, I said. And I don't think I'm ever going to be again. We went back to the house, their house. We sat at the kitchen table, the one they'd bought in 1972. We put on reading glasses. I bought gloves and a magnifying glass from the drugstore. It felt clinical, like we were scientists dissecting a creature. The journal was a nightmare to read. The pages were brittle, the ink was faded, some pages were just a brown smudge, but others were clear, and it was a mix. My mother's looping script and my father's sharp, analytical block printing. My mother's entries were emotional. They were terrified. April 20th, 1985. Walter told me everything. Everything. I looked at the man I've been married to for 25 years, and I did not know him. I feel sick. I haven't stopped crying. April 24th, 1985. He says it's the only way. He says we have to leave. Leave the children? Leave our home? How can he ask this? He says it's either this or a shame so total it will destroy us all. He says we'll be protecting them. May 1st, 1985. The plan is made. He calls it the escape. I call it the end. I walk around this house, touching the walls, looking at photos of Laura and Stephen. This is a kind of death. Leaving them is a death. But staying, what he told me, that is a different kind of dying. A public one. I choose this death. God help me, I choose this. Stephen had to get up and walk out of the room. He went onto the back porch. I heard him crying. Not a soft cry, but a hard, angry, choked sound. I kept reading. My father's entries were different. They were logistical. May 2nd, 1985. The firm has scheduled the full audit for Monday, May 13th. They're flying in an external team. Peter is asking questions. He knows something is wrong. He doesn't know what, but he suspects. He has to. May 5th, 1985. I've been moving the last of the liquid assets. Cashing out the bonds was easy. The shell accounts are clean. It's enough. It will have to be. It's more than most people see in 10 lifetimes. May 10th, 1985. The plan is set. Sunday, Mother's Day. Joyce's idea, poetic, tragic. No one would suspect a thing. We'll leave the car at the park. It's a 2-mile hike through the woods following the creek to the old access road. From there, it's a walk to the bus station. No one will look for 2 middle-aged people on a Greyhound. From there to Miami, and from Miami, south. Joyce is bringing the album. She calls it our headstone, a place to bury our old life. She'll bury it by the creek, in the mud bank, in the oilcloth, a place only we know. It's fitting. I put the magnifying glass down. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were ice cold. Embezzlement. My father. My quiet, boring accountant father. He wasn't just an accountant. He was a partner. And he'd been stealing. Stephen came back in, his face red. What? I just pushed the journal towards him. He read his entry. His face went from white to red. He stole, Stephen whispered. He hit the table. He abandoned us for money, our whole lives, that whole time. He was a thief. He was about to be caught, I said, my voice numb. The audit, Monday, May 13th, the day after they vanished. The silence in the room was deafening. The ghosts of 39 years, the sad, tragic ghosts of our parents, evaporated, and in their place 2 new figures emerged, fugitives, liars, criminals. Stephen's grief, I saw it in his eyes, was hardening. It was turning right in front of me into pure hot rage. Our whole childhood, he said, his voice shaking. The vacations, the new car, my college fund. Laura, was it all stolen? I didn't have an answer. I'm going to the police, he said. Stephen, what's the point? It was 39 years ago, the statute of limitations. The point? He yelled, standing up so fast his chair fell over. The point, Laura. The point is the truth. I'm not protecting him, not anymore. I've spent my whole life grieving a man who didn't exist. We went to the police. The old precinct was gone, replaced by a new glass and steel building. We didn't ask for the missing persons desk. We asked for financial crimes. We were eventually passed to a Detective Angela. She was young, sharp, all business. She listened, her face impassive, as we laid out the story. The disappearance, the journal, the embezzlement. She pulled up the old file on her computer. Detective Michael. He retired in 2004. He passed away in 2018. I see his notes. He officially ruled this a cold case, presumed homicide, in 1995. We showed her the journal. We'd transcribed the key pages. Her eyes widened as she read. Harris, Vance, and Kleiber. I've never heard of them. They folded, Stephen said, who had apparently been on his phone all morning. They went bankrupt in 1989, 4 years after he left. Detective Angela's professionalism was comforting. She wasn't emotional. This was a puzzle to her, and she was going to solve it. Okay, she said, typing. The statute of limitations on the financial crime itself is long, long past. But this is still an active missing persons case, and this journal gives it a whole new direction. This is fraud, identity theft possibly, fleeing prosecution. I can definitely work with this. She took the journal as evidence. She promised to keep us updated. For 2 days we sat in the house, in that kitchen, saying very little. We were two strangers in a museum of our own past. But now all the little plaques on the exhibits were lies. On the third day, Detective Angela called. We found someone, she said. A name from your father's journal entries. Peter. Peter? I said. I remember him. Peter Vance, Dad's partner. He came to the house once for dinner. He cried with us. After. He's 85, Angela said. He's in an assisted living facility in Oakwood, 2 towns over. He's agreed to speak with us. And he specifically asked if you two would be there. The drive to the nursing home was silent. What do you say? What do you say to the man your father betrayed? Peter Vance was frail. He sat in a wheelchair by a window, a plaid blanket over his knees. But his eyes were as sharp as I remembered. They were bright, and they were angry. Laura, he said. His voice was a thin, reedy whisper. And Stephen. My God, you look just like him. He was looking at Stephen, but he wasn't talking about my father. He was talking about his own son, who I remembered was Stephen's age. Mr. Vance. Peter, I started. We're so sorry. He destroyed us, Peter whispered, cutting me off. He wasn't looking at us. He was looking out the window, back to 1985. What happened? Stephen asked. His voice was quiet, respectful. Walter, your father, Peter said, his knuckles white on the arm of his chair. He was a genius, a financial wizard. I brought him into the firm. I made him partner. He was like a brother to me. He paused, and a nurse came by to check on him. He waved her away. The special accounts, he called them. He managed them personally, high-yield investments for our most particular case clients. That's what he told us. But they were shells, all of them, just empty boxes. He'd been doing it for a decade, Peter said, but siphoning. Small amounts at first, then larger. He was cooking the book so perfectly no one could see it, until the '84 market dip. A client wanted to pull out, a big one. Walter stalled. The client got suspicious. He demanded a full external audit. That's when Walter knew the game was up. He vanished on Sunday, May 12th, Peter continued, his voice trembling with an old, cold rage. The auditors arrived on Monday, May 13th. By noon they knew. By 4 p.m. we knew. He was gone, and he'd taken everything. The partnership accounts, the client funds, millions, over $10 million in 1985. I felt dizzy. I had to sit down. We were ruined, Peter said. The firm collapsed. The insurance covered some of the client losses, but our reputations, gone. We were investigated for years. We were innocent, but we were the men who let Walter run wild. We were fools. He finally looked at us. His eyes were wet. I cried with you. I truly believed he was dead. I thought he'd killed himself out of the shame. I grieved him. But he took the money. He took it all, and he left us. He left all of us to clean up the mess. The journal said, Miami South, I offered, my voice barely audible. Peter nodded. He'd set it up for years. Offshore accounts, Panama, the Caymans. He was meticulous. He was a sociopath. Detective Angela, who had been standing quietly in the corner, spoke up. Mr. Vance, we're trying to trace him, but the trail is 39 years old. The banks he used in Panama don't even exist anymore. There's no digital trail. You'll never find him, Peter said. He was too smart. He's gone. He's probably been living on a beach somewhere for 40 years, living like a king, on our money, on your mother's honor. That hit me. My mother, Joyce, her entries. I feel sick. I choose this death. She wasn't a victim of my father. She was his accomplice. She chose him. She chose the money. She chose to leave us rather than face the shame. We drove home. We were two orphans driving a rental car. So that's it, Stephen said, staring at the highway. He gets away with it. He gets away with everything. He ruins his partners. He abandons his children. And he just wins. He's a ghost, I said. We're still the ones haunted, Stephen. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed, he said, and he turned to look at me, his eyes hollow. The parents we loved, they were a lie. The parents who existed, they were monsters. I'd rather have the ghosts, Laura. I really think I would. We returned to the house. It was no longer a home. It was a stage, a set, for a play that had ended 39 years ago. Every object felt tainted, the crystal vase on the dining table, the grandfather clock in the hall. Was this paid for with stolen money? Stephen asked, touching the clock. This whole house? I couldn't stay. I knew it. I couldn't sleep in my childhood bedroom down the hall from the master bedroom where they had plotted to abandon us. We were lost. We had the truth, but the truth was an anchor, not a life raft. It was pulling us down. What do we do now? I asked. We burn it, Stephen said. Burn what? All of it, he said, gesturing to the house. We burn the whole lie to the ground. He didn't mean it literally, but he was right. We had to end it. We started to pack, or rather to sort. What was real? What was fake? We found our old report cards, our childhood drawings. We kept those, the rest. Their clothes, their furniture, their things. It all felt like stolen property. I was cleaning out my mother's desk. It was full of old stationery, dried up pens, recipes, and I had the journal, our headstone. I was flipping through it one last time. Most of the back pages were blank, just brown, warped paper. But in the very back, tucked into a leather sleeve in the cover, was a small, folded piece of paper. It was stiff, and I'd missed it. I thought it was just part of the binding. I carefully unfolded it. It was a document, a poor quality 1980s era photocopy. It was a birth certificate. The name on it was not Joyce, it was not Walter. The name was Ricardo Manuel Torres. The date of birth was October 11th, 1948. The place of birth was Buenos Aires, Argentina. I stared at it. Stephen, who is Ricardo Torres? Stephen came over. He looked at the paper. 1948. That's Dad's birth year, isn't it? I nodded. My father, Walter, was born in 1948. We both just stood there. The implications of this. My father was Ricardo Torres. Walter, the quiet, respectable accountant, was a stolen identity. This changed everything again. We called Detective Angela. I'm not sure she was happy to hear from us. The case was, for all intents and purposes, closed. But this was new. A birth certificate? From Argentina? She said. He's not who he said he was, I said. His whole life in this country, was a lie. She took the information. This time she was working with federal databases, immigration, naturalization. She called back 24 hours later. Her voice was different. It was impressed. You were right, Laura, she said. The man you knew as Walter. He entered the United States in 1971 on a fraudulent passport. The real Walter was a man from Ohio who died in a car crash in 1970 at age 22. Your father, Ricardo, somehow got his documents. He built an entire life on a dead man's name. It all clicked. The embezzlement. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the lie. The audit, scheduled for Monday, May 13th, 1985. It wouldn't just expose the theft. It would expose him. He wouldn't just go to prison for embezzlement. He would be exposed as an illegal immigrant, a fraud. He would be deported. He would lose everything because everything was built on sand. He was trapped, I whispered. He had to run. South, he wrote, Detective Angela said, her voice soft. He didn't just mean south of the border, he meant home. She'd found one last thing, a passenger manifest, a flight from Miami International to Buenos Aires, Argentina. The flight departed on May 14th, 1985. On the manifest, 2 passengers, a Mr. Ricardo Torres and a Mrs. Joyce Torres. They made it. They got away. They were free. After the call, I stood by the window looking out at the yard my father used to mow. He wasn't Walter. He was Ricardo, a man I never knew, a man who stole a life and then stole millions and then stole my mother. And Joyce, my mother, she went with him. She gave up her home, her country, and her children to run away with a man who wasn't even real. The grief was, it was gone. After 39 years, the grief was finally totally gone, and in its place, nothing, just a cold, clear, empty space. Stephen and I stood in the empty living room. We had our boxes, our childhoods. So, he said, they're in Argentina, or were, probably dead by now for real, living under a new name. Probably, I said. Do you want to find them? He asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. Flying to Buenos Aires, hiring a private investigator, showing up on a doorstep. And for what? To see 2 old, scared strangers who chose money over us? No, I said. I don't. The not knowing was the prison, Stephen, and we're out. They're just 2 people who left. They're not our parents. Not anymore. We sold the house. We sold everything in it. The proceeds, we couldn't keep them. It felt dirty. Stephen and I drove to Peter Vance's nursing home. We told him the whole story, the real name, the escape. He just nodded. He looked so tired. We're giving the money from the estate to a Victims of Financial Crimes Fund, Stephen told him. In your name, in the name of the partners. Peter looked at us, and for the first time he smiled, a real smile. Your father, Ricardo, he was a monster, Peter said, but he made 2 good kids. That was enough. Today I live in a small apartment. It's clean, it's bright, it's mine. Stephen went back to Oregon. We talk every week. We talk about his kids, about the weather. We don't talk about them. We don't need to. The journal sits on my bookshelf. It's not a shrine. It's not a headstone. It's just a book, a story about 2 people who made a choice. And that last photo, I still have it. It's in a box. I look at it, at Joyce and Walter walking away from me, holding hands, smiling at the secret that was about to set them free. And I feel free too. They thought they were protecting us from shame, but gave us a lifetime of grief instead. So I have to ask, which one is worse? Subscribe if you believe every family has at least one secret that's waiting for the right moment to be unearthed.